Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the U.S. Azure Partner Community Call for September 2016. My name is Nick Johnson. I've been privileged to be one of your community hosts for the last couple of years on these calls and continued to do that this year, as well as bring in some new folks that I'm going to introduce you to here in a few minutes. So very, very excited to have you here. Again, thank you for choosing to spend an hour of your time with us. We know that you have a choice where you spend your time, and so we're glad you've chosen to spend that time with us today. Just a few logistical things as we get things kicked off. I do need to remind you that this call is being recorded. So if you don't consent to being on a recorded call, although you are in listen-only mode, you would want to disconnect now. We will post the recording of this call to our Yammer group later on today or first thing tomorrow as soon as that's ready. So if you want to catch up on the archive of this call or any previous calls, those will be available for you. During today's call, again, you are in listen-only mode, but if you have any questions or feedback for us as presenters, down in the lower left-hand corner of your browser, you'll see a button that says Messages. That's a place where you can type in a question for any of our presenters. Send us feedback. We'll do our best to answer those questions on the call today. If we cannot answer them on the call, we will go ahead and post those to our Yammer group after the fact. If you're new to our community, you will see that I'm posting some links in the messages pane. So first things first, everybody always asks, can I download the slides from today's presentation? Those are available already. They're posted to our Yammer group, so if you want to download them, follow along, take notes, those are available for you today. We have a fantastic agenda for you today, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll ahead to that. Give me just one moment. There we go. So first things first, I do want to say welcome. We've started off Microsoft's new fiscal year. We know we got a chance to talk to so many of you up at the Worldwide Partner Conference in Toronto, so if you were there, thanks for being there. We're looking forward to talking to a lot of you down at the Ignite conference here later this month as well. We've got some community updates for you here today, so I'll get to that. And then on to our main topic. We're going to talk about OMS, and we've got a speaker who is one of my favorites to listen to, someone who's very passionate about OMS, who knows quite a bit about the product, and is just a very engaging personality, very passionate about Microsoft and what partners and OMS can bring to the table. So I'll introduce you to our speaker there in a few minutes. And then I do want to remind you, at the end of our call today, once we close out the call, in your browser on the left-hand side there where you see the messages pane now, you're going to get a brief survey. It's 4 questions, 3 questions in a text box. And if you would just take 60 seconds to fill that out for us at the end of today's call, that would be really, really appreciated. Tell us how we can make these calls better for you, what sort of topics you want to hear about, how can we make the community more robust in supporting you as a partner and building your business and helping you build success. So we're very, very excited to do that today. So real quickly, I want to share with you a couple of changes that we're making to the communities. So if you've been with us in the past, you know that this has been the core Azure community. And we've had monthly calls, and we've got a blog series, and we've got a Yammer group, and quite literally thousands of you have participated in that, and we're thankful that you've chosen to do that. To help us keep up with the pace of growth and innovation that our product group and our company is bringing to Azure, we're actually adding some resources in terms of people and in additional communities. What this is going to allow us to do is keep focusing on some of the core parts of Azure that we love. And so this community right here, we're actually going to rename this just a little bit. We're going to call it the Azure Infrastructure and Management Community. So if you think the core infrastructure, virtual machines, networking, storage, backup, site recovery, all the things that go with kind of the modern data center, the hybrid data center, that's what you're going to expect to see a lot of us focus on here in this call and in the resources that we've got available for you here. But we're not stopping there. We're actually adding a few other communities that you can be a part of. So let me share those with you here. And again, this is in the slides that I mentioned earlier that you can download. It's in the messages pane in your browser. So if you want to go out to the Yammer group and download these, you'll be able to. As you can see, we've got 7 communities now that we've started up that you can join and you can follow along with. And I've highlighted the one that you're at today, in red there. That's the Azure Infrastructure and Management community. But to help you, we've also got the application development community. So if you think more of the PaaS, the platform as a service side of Azure, that's some of the resources that you're going to find there. We've also spun up a data platform and analytics community. So if you happen to be focused on SQL Server or data storage or big data, anything to do with that, you're going to find a whole bunch of resources there, including additional folks that are going to help you build out your practices there. And then we've added an enterprise mobility and security practice. I happen to know that over 300 of you have already joined that. So if you're doing EMS or you've got peers who are doing EMS, please send them on over. And as you can see, we also have some Dynamics, Office 365, and Windows and Devices communities. And today, for the first time, I'm excited to tell you that we're adding an 8th community. And I think this is going to be the last one for the year, but we are adding one more. And so let me bring that up here. And this is for those of you that are focused on the open source solutions. If you've followed along with Azure for any period of time, you know that Azure is a very, very friendly platform to the open source solutions as well as the Microsoft solutions. And we want to dedicate resources, people that are passionate about open source and helping you build up solutions and build your business on open source communities. So just today, we are launching the open source solutions. There will be a community call coming up later this month. We've got a blog series that's just kicking off. There's a Yammer group that we've just opened up as of yesterday. And so if you're interested or part of the open source solutions family, I encourage you to jump in and join that and be on the lookout for more information. Now I know that as a partner, there is a ton of information out there, and how do you keep up with it all? Well, our partner team here at Microsoft, there's a lot of us, has hopefully done a good job at trying to put all this into a view that has some links and some resources that you can follow along with. So depending on where you're at in your business, if you're a technical person, those communities I just mentioned are a great place to connect. If you happen to live on the business or the practice lead side and you want to follow along with some of the business conversations that we're having, here's some additional resources that you can follow along with. So this slide is in the slide deck. You can download it from our Yammer group and you'll be able to do that. So without any further ado, let me get out of the way and let me introduce you to Carl Rautenstraub. And Carl is one of our global black belts for the Americas who has spent some time focusing on the Operations Management Suite, OMS. And Carl's very passionate, as I mentioned, about OMS, about partners, about success for both things. And so we thought it would be great to bring him here today to talk about OMS, to do some really cool demos. And so without any further ado, Carl, the floor is yours, my friend.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, Nick, and hope everybody's having a great day here on a fine Thursday. I'm based out of Florida. It's beautiful here today. That's not going to remain that way through the weekend. So as I watch my local Jacksonville Jaguars battle the Packers on Sunday, no one will need to envy the weather. It's going to be miserable. My son and I may pass out from heat exhaustion. So keep the envy to a minimum, folks. It's about to get nasty here again. All right, let's go ahead and get moving. And good news right up front. You may see at the bottom that there are 53 slides in this deck. We are not going through anywhere close to that. The vast majority of the materials in this deck are meant for all of you as some good reference material going forward after the call. So I hope you find that helpful. And we're going to spend most of our time today taking a look at this solution live. I will caution you up front that this is a high-level introduction and overview of OMS. The focus really being on how to talk about OMS, the Operations Management Suite, with your customer in terms of hybrid cloud adoption and the role that OMS plays. And if you'd like more details and you're headed to Ignite at the end of the month, you will be able to find me in the site recovery booth in the main vendor area there inside Ignite. And I'll also be delivering a session on Azure Site Recovery real-world learnings. So come by, see me, harass, heckle. Everyone is welcome. I'd love to see you there. And real quickly, for folks who may be new to the Operations Management Suite, as Nick hinted earlier, we have several components that make up this suite, and they're focused on the areas that you see here. And as we go through, I'm going to point out the product names. I don't want to dwell on those too much. because there is a large marketing arm here, as you guys know, and those names could change over time. Not that I know anything right now, but we've certainly all seen that. So we really want to concentrate on the areas, the high-level areas that the OMS suite addresses. And one of the big reasons for that is the little mention here in the center is going to be a new offering that's coming into the OMS suite that I'm actually going to give you a preview of today. For those familiar with Blue Stripe, our acquisition last year, we are integrating the Blue Stripe technology into Operations Management Suite in the form of Application Dependency Monitor. So you're going to see that. We're going to talk about that functionality going forward today. And if nothing else, if there's absolutely nothing else you take away from this call, please do remember that OMS is a suite of technologies that address both private on-premise and public clouds. And notice I don't just say Azure there. OMS is a set of offerings that can span and offer value in multiple public cloud environments, not just inclusive of Azure. So that being said, let's get some of the sales stuff out of the way. I heard many partners last year loud and clear that we needed to have some more flexible ways of packaging OMS. And while I have no control over the pricing and the packaging, I do have the ability to deliver that feedback to our business groups, to the folks who do make those decisions. And July 1st, we saw them take the first step towards offering more varied pricing programs, better and more options around how customers can acquire the OMS suite. And for those of you who happen to be P sellers and have a V- or a B- Microsoft address, you can find out about ahead of time about a few announcements that we're going to make at Ignite. So I didn't mean to strike through there. I meant to underline that. But that link, which again will be available to you after this presentation, will take you to a recent announcement that we did internally about even more options coming in terms of how the OMS suite will be packaged and priced going forward. So for those of you who don't have that internal access, I apologize. You will have to wait until Ignite, but thankfully we're only a few weeks away, and there's going to be some even cooler and more flexible options coming forward. But this is what we did in July 1st. We had a promo that ran last fiscal year. That ran out, so we still have the capability to add on the OMS suite for existing System Center customers based on 10 VM or 2 VM packs. The price did go up a little bit after that promo ended, but the one thing I heard again and again was we have some customers who are not current System Center users, current System Center customers. What about them? If they would love a package price, they would love to be able to benefit from all of these OMS solutions in the portfolio. What can they do? Well, as of July 1st, we have a new offering. So for those who are not System Center customers, they can acquire OMS and the System Center suite for one low per VM per month price. So finally, we have something available for those who want the suite, don't have System Center, and it gives you an option as you talk to your customers. And we're doing that. We're adding more flexible pricing options. Again, if you have internal access, if you have an appmicrosoft.com address, go ahead, watch that replay of the video I mentioned about what's coming in the Ignite timeframe. And keep in mind that it's not going to be the last announcement you will see about OMS this year. We are going to continue the feverish pace of introducing new capabilities, adding value to the suite for our customers throughout the rest of this fiscal year and really going forward even beyond that. So when we look at the calendar year in 2016, we introduced just a massive number of capabilities across all of the components in the OMS suite. And through the rest of this calendar year, what is fiscal year, our first half of fiscal year 17, we're not going to slow down. We're going to continue to introduce new functionality, great new features, meeting those requests that your customers have put in on the Azure feedback forums, and just continuing to build the best offerings out there in analytics, security, automation, and backup and recovery. So look for even more capabilities being introduced in the suite going forward. So you're already excited, and we're just getting into this. Where do you go to learn more? Here's what we have available this fiscal year. So we are going to begin in October a series of in-person partner practice enablement boot camps focused on the OMS suite. And that first link will take you to the calendar, take you to that schedule, and give you an opportunity to go ahead and attend some training, some in-person instructor-led training in your local training center. So keep your eyes peeled on that. I don't know that we have any posted just yet. They should be posted soon. That whole series is going to kick off in October. And then the rest of what you see there is more self-driven online training, some hands-on demo capabilities as well that are available to you right now. So all of those are live links. They'll take you right to the Microsoft Virtual Academy or to the Microsoft Partner Network location where those environments and those training sessions exist. And to add to that great set of links that Nick presented earlier for the U.S. partner community, we have a few more. Just what you needed, right? More URLs to bookmark. Well, I promise you these are well worth it. Not going to waste your time with fluff. Some good details in here. I am going to switch over to my browser in just a second and show you exactly what some of these look like, why you would want to spend the time bookmarking these sites and returning to them going forward. Hopefully everyone knows about this one already, the Azure documentation site. Boy, what we put out there publicly is just really refreshing. And for anyone who's had to work with a vendor in the past where you require a super secret login and handshake in order to get detailed documentation and answers to frequently asked questions and knowledge base articles, boy, what we put out there in the Azure Public Documentation site is really a breath of fresh air. So not going to belabor all of those points. Everybody can look at those going forward. I am going to switch over now and show you some of the really good stuff on those sites. And throughout the rest of this presentation, I'm going to be going back and forth between my desktop and the presentation. So I'll apologize for the periodic black screens that you'll see, but I promise you it'll be worth it. And Nick, while I'm making that switch, do we have any questions that have popped up yet in the chat?
The only one, you may be talking about this in a few minutes, so if you are, just go ahead and say so, but is what type of support do we see from Azure Backup and Site Recovery related to Linux VMs versus the Windows ecosystem?
Ooh, that is an outstanding question. And while I try to reshare my desktop here, because it looks like Skype was not cooperating, I will say that we will cover that later. So not to worry, I will get to that. I'll make sure I get to it. And the short answer is we do have support. The devil is in the details, and I'll share those details as we go forward.
While you're doing that, Carl, one other question that came in related to something you just showed was the PPE Bootcamp training link.
Yes.
That is one of those ones that if you're not a P-seller, that you're not going to be able to see that yet. So if you don't have an @Microsoft.com email address, you won't be able to see that quite yet. Myself and Juan Cruz, who's also on the call as one of our community leads, will be posting that to the Yammer group as soon as there is something that's actually worth sharing. So stand by for that. Stay tuned to the Yammer group, and there'll be more information coming in the weeks ahead.
Yes, and the good news for those who are not V or B dashes, you will be able to find that calendar as well on the site that I'm pointing you to right now. So one of the first links was aka.ms/OMS Partner. And you can log into that with your MPN credentials. There's a bunch of tremendous information out here. And one of them is, one of those items is right here under the training bookmark, the schedule for those upcoming boot camps. So you can see this is what we wrapped up with last year. The new schedule will be posted here as soon as that's finalized. So this is another location you'll be able to find that info. And you can see there's a bunch of great self-service training info out here as well, including some downloadable training on site recovery and backup that is incredibly detailed. There is some phenomenal information in those two zip files that you can download that even gets into troubleshooting during implementation. So this is a great site. It's continuously updated by my good friend Venkat Ganti, who has really compiled a tremendous set of resources here on OMS. For those who are P-sellers, who do have that @Microsoft.com address, you can access the last link on that slide, which is our internal infopedia on hybrid IT management. You can see here that I've highlighted OMS. We also have System Center content on this same page. Some really, really good info here, so that's yet another one. And I am making myself happy and simplifying my browser by closing tabs as I go along here. And the question that came in about what is our Linux support with these the members of the OMS suite, and I know site recovery and backup were the items in particular that were asked by that partner. Again, what we share publicly is just really refreshing to me. So if I want to know what site recovery supports from a guest operating system perspective, either physical servers or Hyper-V-based VMs or VMware-based VMs, the book of record is the Azure Public Documentation site. We update this frequently. You'll be able to get the most recent updates here in the blog feed, and you can see there's one from August 12th on improved Linux support. We can click that article. That's great. But if we want the full story, the best place to go is into the deployment documentation. Whoops. Pick your source environment. So let's say the Linux machines that I want to replicate to Azure or migrate to Azure are based on VMware platform. I can go here. We're going to deploy everything for customers who are new to Azure, who have no existing or no serious investment in the classic ASM based infrastructure. We're going to go forward with them in ARM. I'm going to choose the Azure portal there, and then I'm going to go over here to protected machine prerequisites, and that's going to give me a number of different things. Including some of the Azure limitations that I need to be aware of before I plan on migrating or protecting VMs, and I can get those supported operating systems. So what do we support from a Linux perspective with site recovery with a VMware source? There we go. There's the list today, and this constantly updates. Red Hat 7.1 and 7.2, CentOS 7 through 7.2, those were added recently in that August 12th announcement. So as we add new distributions, and we will be adding new distributions and new versions throughout the course of the year and going forward, you'll find that up-to-date info right here in the public documentation. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to a few slides, and then we're going to get into the good stuff. How do I work some of the magic with OMS? All right, so let's switch back to that presentation content. Nick, any other questions while I'm moving back here?
No, there aren't any questions that have come in at this point, but just a reminder for folks, if you have questions for our presenter today, down in the lower left-hand section of your browser, you'll see a messages button. You can click on that and you can type in your question, and we'll do our best to answer those.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir, and thanks everybody on the call. So, I said that I really wanted to talk about OMS today in the sense of hybrid cloud. What does it do to make that journey to hybrid cloud easier? How does it enable customers to adopt the best of public and private cloud technologies? Well, there are a few things that need to be in place for customers to have what the industry would consider to be a hybrid cloud. One is networking. Right? You have to be connected in one way, shape, or form to the public cloud properties that you're using. And I've called up ExpressRoute here, and I've done that for a very good reason. I'll get to that in a second. But it doesn't have to be ExpressRoute, right? If I'm running SaaS-based or PaaS-based applications in the public cloud, I can leverage public internet connections to access those. If I want direct connectivity, but ExpressRoute is outside my budget, there's site-to-site VPN potential there to establish that private communication path between on-premise environments and the public cloud. But then there is ExpressRoute as well for our larger customers or our customers who have low latency or data privacy concerns, service privacy concerns. ExpressRoute is a great solution, right? And I wanted to bring it up for one particular reason. Most of what we offer in OMS today is based on publicly accessible Azure services. So site recovery, backup, they use Azure Public Resources, right? Azure Storage, recovery vaults. These are things which are addressable through URLs over the public internet. Now, for customers who are concerned from a security perspective, they do both encrypt traffic in flight. For those who need even more assurance that their data transfers will remain private, ExpressRoute is an option. Even though they are public services, they are accessible over public peering. So even though I'm not having an IP to IP communication like I would with something like virtual machines, that I have a direct path that's going to go here from one IP address to another, from their network to Azure IaaS over that ExpressRoute connection. I can still leverage that ExpressRoute circuit for accessing services like site recovery and backup that have public URLs. I can restrict the traffic to go over that ExpressRoute circuit, and that's what we call public peering. So when you have conversations with your customers about hybrid cloud, if those concerns come up, make sure that you're well versed in that public peering conversation. Now, a great way to bridge the gap between on-premise environments and Azure is with site recovery. And we talk about site recovery most often as a disaster recovery technology. It is a replication technology. So a change occurs in my SQL Server database or in my Oracle database or in my SAP infrastructure. That change is replicated. That change is copied from the source machine, from the source volume to Azure. Sorry, pardon me while I take a quick drink. There we go. Hopefully that'll help out. And what that does is it gives me a mirrored copy of that data set that's present on virtual disks inside of an Azure storage account, either premium or standard storage. So I have a very, very up-to-date replica, right? Now, we often talk about that as a way to recover when really bad things happen in that customer's data center. They can fail over and start running those machines and those applications from the Azure data center of their choosing while that horrible thing has knocked out service at their production site. But replication allows me to do something else. Replication also allows me to migrate machines, migrate applications from that on-premise or an Amazon EC2 infrastructure, an Amazon virtual machine-based infrastructure, to Azure. So site recovery is that bridge that allows me to, at my choosing, move machines, move applications to Azure temporarily or permanently. So we got to keep that in mind. It is a great replication solution, a great disaster recovery solution, but it's also a great migration platform. And I'm going to show you some of the improvements that we've made in the service that make it even easier to migrate machines. So what do I need to have in place in order to leverage this capability? Well, there's an Azure subscription, of course, right? Azure Site Recovery is a service that runs inside of Azure. It relies on a recovery vault, which I create. It relies on at least one storage account, and it relies on a virtual network or multiple virtual networks and multiple storage accounts being created inside that Azure subscription. Once I have that, no matter what the source environment is, on-premise or Amazon Web Services, I need to deploy a management server. And that management server, at least one of them, is responsible for capturing the changes that occur on those source machines thanks to the mobility service that it deploys onto each one of those machines, and copying the changes as they occur across either the internet or an express route connection into an Azure storage account. And then when I'm ready, when I decide it's time, I perform a test. I make sure that everything is going to come up in Azure as expected. And that testing is non-disruptive to that data transfer that's occurring in the background. So I'm not pausing replication. I don't have to catch up. Everything continues in the background while I verify everything works as expected. And then finally, when I'm ready, or in the event of a disaster, when I need to temporarily run these resources, I go ahead and perform a failover. And that failover moves those running resources, starts those running resources in Azure. Now, if this is a migration, I'm going to commit that activity. I'm going to sever the relationship between Azure and the on-premise or the Amazon Web Services environment, and I'm going to happily start running that application and those servers in Azure full-time. If it was a disaster event, and today this only applies to on-premise environments, not to AWS, I can then move those resources back using the same technology and using the same techniques that I got them into Azure in the first place. So for migration, I'm not going to perform that step. I'm going to clean up, I'm going to sever the relationship, and that's it. For temporarily running those machines during a disaster, I'm going to keep that relationship in place, I'm going to reverse the flow and go back. Really cool technology, and there's one other use case for it, and we're starting to see more and more of this. So I am replicating an environment, an application, a multi-server application environment to Azure. It's constantly being updated. It's sitting there. I have the capability using the powerful automation in Azure Site Recovery to create a copy of that infrastructure at any point in time, not disrupting the replication. And after I've done whatever I need to prepare it for my developers, I can hand it over to them and start leveraging the power of the cloud to do dev test off of exact copies of my production environment. So this is a really cool use case for Azure Site Recovery. And if your customers are familiar with storage-based cloning technologies, let's say they're a NetApp customer and they use SnapMirror and FlexClone to create development and test environments in another data center based off of their production environment, they're going to nod their head. They understand this. They see the value. And you being able to empower and enable them to do this in the cloud with site recovery is really going to get them excited. This is cool. This leverages the cloud in a way we all talk about it all the time, which is as a dev test platform and also as a pay-as-you-go, use the resources when you need them type of model. This is just a no-brainer. It's just a great use case. And then finally, when we talk about bridging the gap between on-premise environments and creating a hybrid cloud, leveraging Azure as the public cloud aspect of that, there's Store Simple. You will see a broadcast invite come out for some exciting updates on Store Simple, again around that Ignite timeframe, that will further integrate Store Simple into the hybrid cloud story and will allow you to have some really cool conversations with your customers, and even some of those revolving around OMS. So stay tuned, some cool things coming. But when we talk about hybrid cloud, we talk about OMS, you're going to begin to be able to talk about Store Simple in those same conversations very smoothly. And we can't forget about backup, right? Backup is one of those things that we all consider to be boring, but it's something everybody needs. And what we've done with Azure Backup is really exciting. We built a from the ground up cloud backup solution, cloud-oriented, cloud-focused. Unlike the other backup vendors in the industry, we didn't retrofit a legacy solution to leverage cloud as a storage media only. We use cloud not only for long-term storage and retention, but also for intelligence. The Azure Backup Service offloads a lot of the grooming, a lot of the retention-based activities that are very heavy, that are very CPU intensive, to the cloud service, to the Azure Backup Service. So the requirements that a customer has to implement on-premise are much lighter. This is a much smaller footprint. Really, really cool capabilities. And we just announced the GA of support for backup of VMware-based VMs. So the question that came in earlier around what is our Linux support with Azure Backup, our story prior to last week was if you had Linux virtual machines running on a Hyper-V infrastructure, we could back them up to Azure. If you had Linux VMs running in Azure, we could back them up and protect them. Now we've added one more element to that. If you have Linux VMs running on a VMware-based infrastructure, we can back them up both on-premise and to Azure. So we keep expanding that Microsoft loves Linux story, and now with Azure Backup, we're able to offer that same equal support of Linux and Windows, and it just keeps getting better and better. Okay, so I'm going to switch over in just a second to the Azure portal and show you guys a few things. Before I do that, I want to tackle a few more slides, but I'm going to take a breath, grab another glass of water, and Nick, see if there are any questions out there in the forum.
There are several that have come in. This is a popular topic. So
All
to summarize
right.
a few of them. When you think about the Azure Site Recovery piece, are there any RPOs or RTO kind of control mechanisms? And then are there any SLAs around those?
Oh, fantastic question. See, I love that. That's somebody in the audience who is near and dear to my heart, right? They understand disaster recovery, and I was that boring guy back in my customer days, folks. I was responsible for business continuity and storage infrastructure, and boy, do I understand the root of those questions. So the answer is, in terms of RPO, we have, in the form of Azure Site Recovery, a continuous data protection solution. So back in my day, we had to set schedules around our replication cycles. I had to state and make decisions based on criticality and bandwidth, how frequently I would send changes across the wire from one location to another. Do I want to replicate every 5 minutes, 15, or 60, based on application criticality, based on bandwidth availability? What we do with site recovery is we replicate as frequently as possible. So as long as the customer's network infrastructure between their site and Azure can accommodate, we will replicate changes within seconds and minutes of them occurring in production. Now, what does the customer need in order to meet a specific RPO? We're going to talk about that here in this set of slides. I couldn't ask for a better segue. In terms of RTO, we have a stated RTO in the site recovery SLAs around what we guarantee. And that RTO SLA is 4 hours. So 4-hour recovery for VMs based on size. It can actually exceed 4 hours if it's a large VM. I like to say, and I like to demonstrate all the time, that is the SLA that we guarantee and adhere to. The actual SLA, the actual recovery time objective, is far lower. The demonstrations that I've done, the proof of concepts that I've done in the past with customers, I have never seen it take more than 30 minutes to bring up multiple machines. We recently had a customer do a test with 180 machines. It took them well under an hour to get all 180 machines up and running in Azure. So there's what we state in writing, there's what happens in reality, but we do have that written SLA, which is unique in the disaster recovery as a service provider business. Nobody else does that. So we're going to talk about the RPO needs coming up here in the slides, but before I get into that, Nick, anything else?
Yeah, there's a couple more that we'll take right now. You talked about the management server requirement. Can that be a physical server or a VM, or what's the difference there?
Oh, great question. So the only stipulation we have is the operating system today needs to be 2012 R2. Whether that OS is installed on a physical server or a virtual server doesn't matter. I put some statistics up there for the size of that machine in the public documentation. If you refer to the capacity planning section, we provide further guidance on how big that machine should be and how many of them should be in the environment. So we have very specific guidance. It's all based on change rate, how much data is going to flow through that machine on a daily basis, and that will help determine if it should be physical, virtual, how big, how many, and it is very good, very prescriptive guidance. Great. All right, Nick, you got another one for me?
Outstanding. Let's take two more, and then we'll move on.
And I'm already thinking we may have to do a part 2 here.
Yeah, and we can make that happen. So does the migration piece of Azure Site Recovery do anything to support the vCloud Air environment or the Google Cloud Platform environment?
Great question. So I'm going to go back to the product name there, folks, Azure Site Recovery. So as a destination, the only supported platform is Azure, of course. As a source, we have VMware on-premise infrastructures. We have Hyper-V on-premise infrastructures, physical servers, Windows and Linux across all of those. We support Amazon Web Services, some of the virtual machines in Amazon Web Services, but we do not support Google Compute platform as a source environment today. vCloud Air, to be honest with you, I have to check with the product team. My gut feel is we do not, and I'll give you the reason for that. So site recovery relies in a VMware infrastructure on communication with vCenter. We use VMware vCenter and we use VMware's own vSphere APIs in order to interact with the hypervisor and do what we need to in terms of orchestrating replication and failover and failback. So if my understanding of vCloud Air environments is correct, the customer doesn't have that same level of access to the vSphere infrastructure, the hypervisors themselves, or vCenter. So if they do for some reason, if it's a service provider that gives them that, then we could absolutely support it. We'd work just fine. If they don't have that level of access, which I don't believe they do in all or most of vCloud Air infrastructures, we can't help. We can't do what we need to do. It's a great question.
All right, so let's keep going on the presentation, and if we can't get to all the questions today, we'll set up more time to either take them offline or to do another call with you, Carl.
I knew I was a little ambitious on what I put together here, Nick. But I'm glad to see the interest. This is great. This couldn't be better. All right, let's keep going on our theme here. So, no customer knows what they need or what they have. And that sounds like a really terribly pessimistic thing for me to say, but it's true, right? I've been doing this a long time. And if you go to a customer and say, what are the dependencies for this application? So you're telling me this is a critical app for your business. You need to protect it. You're looking at Azure Site Recovery, or you're looking to move it to Azure. What are the pieces and parts that make it up? How is it all tied together? Or even worse, what are the performance requirements? If we're going to replicate it, if we're going to protect it or migrate it, we need to know what the change rate is, right? So we can give you a desirable level of service. I never know the answers to those questions. And I can say that I'm not even throwing stones, because I was one of those customers. I didn't know. Wasn't something I tracked on a regular basis. Great news is we have tools coming which will help. The first one is Application Dependency Monitor, the former Blue Stripe software. That does what everybody needs. It maps end-to-end connectivity for applications. What talks to what in the flow, over what ports, what's the performance levels, the latency in all those layers, and it allows customers to really quickly and easily discover how applications are architected, and then keep an eye on the health throughout the layers within that application. And I'm going to show you an early view of what that looks like. I'm lucky enough, I have the preview in my OMS workspace, and I'll give you a very simple view of what that looks like. As soon as I have more time, I'll have much cooler things to show you. Now, if the customer wants to devote the time to work with you to deploy ADM as a trial or within their subscription, they'll be able to get that really cool information. But what if they're not ready to make that investment yet, and you still need to know the change rate? Well, our awesome site recovery team has a tool that they're working on. It's in preview right now, private preview. I have access to it, haven't had time to play with it, that will allow you to run from a central console a performance collection that will give you everything you need to show that customer what would be required from a storage and a networking perspective, and also that management server perspective, in order to meet their desired RPO with site recovery. So you will be able to come back and say, Mr. or Ms. Customer, you currently have 100 megabits worth of outbound connectivity to Azure. That's great. But if you want to get to your 15-minute RPO for your applications with site recovery, we need to upgrade that to 200 megabits. So we're going to give you information like that. We're also going to flag, and I apologize that this is a terrible eye chart, but it's the best screen capture I could get you for now. Down there in red, we have highlighted a machine that is not a good candidate for Azure. And that's a great thing that this tool is going to do for you as well. So you'll see this type of functionality with ADM. If you have somebody that doesn't want to invest that much time in the project, that much upfront work, this is going to be a great alternative that will still help you be very scientific about what it's going to take to give them what they want. So really, really cool tool that's coming. You'll see that announced everywhere in the Azure blog. It'll be available for download off of TechNet, and also through our partner notification channels. So great stuff. All of this to help with both migrations and with disaster recovery opportunities. So really, really good tooling that you'll see going forward. And we are likely not going to get to this section, which is I've migrated machines to Azure, or I'm now operating a hybrid environment where I have resources running on both. How can OMS help me protect an Azure environment? How can it help me monitor an Azure environment and an on-premise environment? We're probably going to have to do this in part 2 of a session, because I really do want to switch over and show you guys another demo here of both application dependency mapping and of site recovery in a migration scenario. So once again, I'm going to take a deep breath, grab a glass of water, switch over to presenting my desktop, and pause for some questions.
There are several, so we probably won't get to them all, and folks, we will get your questions answered, maybe just not live on the call here today. So I'm not sure if you know anything about this, Carl, but let me do this one. The management server, let me rephrase that. The management server you talked about for the site recovery piece, it obviously is needed for AWS and VMware. Do you need it with Hyper-V as well, or is there something different about the Hyper-V platform?
That is a great question. So you do not need it. And in the documentation, in the deployment steps, we spell out what components are needed, what software, are there any machines that are needed. In the case of Hyper-V, both with and without Virtual Machine Manager, you do not need to deploy the management server. What we do with Hyper-V is we leverage the native Hyper-V replica technology as the engine that moves data from that Hyper-V host for the virtual machines being protected to Azure. So great question. The answer is no. The management server is not needed in a Hyper-V infrastructure. It is needed for Amazon Web Services, VMware, and physical servers.
Sounds great. Thanks, Carl. I see your desktop starting to show up here, so as soon as that's visible, I think we can keep going.
Yeah, we've got a good tradition going here, Nick, where it crashes the first time, and then when I share it the second time, it seems to work okay. So hopefully that will be the case here. It's still showing loading on my side. I'm not sure if you're seeing any progress there.
Yeah, we're seeing a loading screen as well. So let's take another question.
Perfect.
Curious about the monitoring side of OMS. Does it use any of the monitoring features of Intune? And does it include any antivirus stuff?
Oh, great question. So we continue to add more and more plugins and functionality inclusive of the Microsoft ecosystem as a whole. Unless something has been announced, and I'm ashamed to admit not even I can keep up with all the OMS announcements. We do not yet have integration with EMS. I can verify that under the data sources section with you in just a second. But we do still have alerts that will be thrown and monitoring capabilities through the Microsoft monitoring agent that OMS and Log Analytics use to flag things like missing antivirus updates, the absence of anti-malware. There's a ton that we can report on with the current capabilities today.
Very good. All right, got time for one more?
I sure do, because this is being really stubborn about letting me share my desktop out.
All right. Does the Azure Backup Server support VMware aware backups via vCenter, or is that Data Protection Manager only?
That's a really good question. Somebody was reading the documentation there. So today, the VMware backup capability is only present in System Center. The most recent update release of System Center DPM 2012. It will be coming to Azure Backup Server. We have a timeline right now of October-ish. So as somebody who doesn't write the code, I can't make any commitments there, but the product team has shared with me that in October we should see that come to Azure Backup Server, and it will be exactly the same functionality. The only rule that applies there is the same rule that has always applied to Azure Backup Server, which is no backup to tape. DPM, backup to tape, yes. Azure Backup Server, backup to tape, no. Outside of that, fully equivalent functionality going forward in that October release.
All right, very good. Looks like we're still having some desktop sharing challenges there, so maybe we should jump back into the slides and kind of wrap that up. And then we will schedule a second call with you to keep going on this, because I think there's a ton more of really good information to cover.
Yeah, there's a lot, that's for sure. So let me switch back because I've got some really cool things to share here. More Ignite announcements. You guys are getting a little preview here. All right, let's move forward. I won't beat a dead horse on that. Here's the exciting stuff. Okay, so I'm now operating in a hybrid cloud environment. I have some machines that are running in production in Azure. I want to make sure I don't sacrifice availability of those machines, right? Moving them to the cloud, I should still be able to back them up. I still should be able to protect them from a site or a regional level disaster. So how do I do that? Well, we have had for a long time now, it's I think closing in on a year and a half, the capability to use Azure Backup to back up those virtual machines to a vault in that same region in the Azure Public Cloud. We added the capability to protect VMs based on premium storage. We do that in a cost-effective manner where the backups themselves do not stay on premium storage, so very customer-friendly there. And that's just great. That's something we need to have, right? Whether it's data corruption, whether it's a malicious event, or an accidental deletion of the entire VM itself, Azure Backup can help recover, can help get back up and running. What we are adding, and this just wrapped up the private preview and will be moving to public preview very soon, is the capability to use site recovery inside of Azure to protect against the failure of an entire Azure region. So let's say something crazy and catastrophic happens, production VMs run in East US, you will now have the capability through Azure Site Recovery to fail over those machines, to fail over that application to another Azure region of your choosing. Why do we need this? We have geographically redundant storage. Well, geographically redundant storage is great outside of the fact that you have absolutely no control over the failover, and when it is failed over, you are left with virtual hard disks in a storage account that you need to completely rebuild VMs from. Site Recovery automates that whole process. When I talked with a customer in Germany about this, back in the December timeframe, he said this, not me. When he heard about this capability, he classified us as the only enterprise-class public cloud. We were the only ones to provide native disaster recovery and backup. So public preview coming really soon. And this is how it works. It is a native workflow that allows you to discover the VMs in the production IaaS infrastructure that you want to protect, including things like the VNet that they're based on, load balancers that are deployed, everything that makes that a true, fully functional application inside of Azure, including things like public IP addresses, private IP addresses, and build all of that using site recovery in an orchestrated fashion through this really customer-friendly, intelligent workflow. So this is a first-class, unparalleled public cloud service. And you can find out more about it at Ignite. Stop by the booth and see me and my peers who will be there. And boy, you're going to have something cool to talk to customers about. So I'm obviously really excited about this. This is just a super capability, and I think it's a good time for me to drop the mic and leave it there. And we'll pick up on round two with more on monitoring with OMS.
All right, very good. Carl, thank you. Folks, you've overwhelmed us with your questions today, which is awesome. That's what this community is all about, is getting you information that's useful to you. I know we didn't get to every single question. I'm taking those down. Carl and I are going to take those offline. We will post the answers back to the Yammer group. You've also given us several ideas for some upcoming blog posts, so make sure that you're following along with the blog. And in just a minute, when I close out the call, like I mentioned at the very beginning, you're going to get a survey that's going to pop up on the left-hand side of your screen. If you wouldn't mind just to take 60 seconds and fill out that survey for us to let us know how can we help you better in this community, what sort of topics are you interested in seeing in the future, we would really love to hear that from you. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to Carl. Thank you to all of you who attended today and invested an hour of your time with us. We'll go ahead and close this out now, and we'll look forward to talking to you next month. Stay tuned to Yammer for updates on part 2 of this call series. Thanks, everybody.